Imagine spending years creating what would become one of the greatest masterpieces in human history, only for it to hang quietly on a museum wall for centuries. Then one morning, it disappears. No dramatic gunfight. No masked criminals crashing through windows. Just an empty space where Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa had once been. And strangely enough, that theft would do something nobody expected. It wouldn't destroy the painting's reputation. It would make it the most famous painting in the world. This is the story of Leonardo da Vinci, the Mona Lisa, and the theft that changed art history forever. To understand why the theft mattered so much, we need to go back more than 400 years. In the early 1500s, Leonardo da Vinci was already one of the most brilliant minds in Europe. He painted, he studied anatomy, he designed machines that were centuries ahead of their time. And somewhere around 1503, he began working on a portrait of a woman believed to be Lisa Gherardini, the wife of a wealthy merchant from Florence. At first glance, there was nothing particularly dramatic about the commission. It was simply a portrait. But Leonardo wasn't interested in simply copying what he saw. He spent years refining the painting, softening the shadows, perfecting the details, creating that mysterious smile that would puzzle people for centuries. Eventually, the painting we now call the Mona Lisa was completed, but Leonardo never seemed eager to part with it. In fact, he kept it with him for years. When he eventually moved to France, the painting went with him. After Leonardo's death in 1519, the Mona Lisa entered the French royal collection. Over time, it would find its way into the Louvre Museum in Paris. And there it remained, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, respected by artists, admired by scholars. But here's something many people don't realize. The Mona Lisa was not yet the global celebrity we know today. It was important, it was admired, but it wasn't the single most famous painting on Earth. That was about to change, and it would happen because of a man almost nobody remembers. His name was Vincenzo Peruggia. We'll come back to him in a moment. First, picture Paris in the summer of 1911. The Louvre stood as one of the world's greatest museums. Its galleries were filled with priceless treasures. To most visitors, the Mona Lisa was simply one masterpiece among many. Then came Monday, August 21st. A seemingly ordinary day. Museum staff moved through the halls. Visitors arrived expecting another routine morning. But something was wrong. Very wrong. The Mona Lisa was gone. At first, people assumed it had been moved for photography, or restoration, or cleaning. After all, museums relocated artwork all the time. But hours passed. Then, more hours. And eventually, a terrifying realization began to spread. The painting hadn't been moved. It had been stolen. Suddenly, the Louvre was in chaos. Doors were closed. Employees were questioned. Police flooded the museum. The search began immediately, but there was one problem. Nobody knew where the painting was, or who had taken it. Before we uncover what happened next, if you enjoy stories where a single moment changes history forever, subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Now, back to the mystery. News of the theft exploded across France, then across Europe, then across the world. Newspapers couldn't get enough of the story. How could one of the Louvre's treasures simply vanish? People lined up outside the museum, not to see the Mona Lisa, but to see the empty space where it had once been hung. Think about that for a moment. Thousands of people traveled to look at an empty wall. The mystery had become bigger than the painting itself, and every newspaper headline made the story even larger. The police desperately searched for suspects. At one point, they even questioned famous artists and intellectuals. Rumors spread everywhere. Some people thought an international crime syndicate was involved. Others believed a wealthy collector had secretly commissioned the theft. The investigation became a sensation. But while the world searched for elaborate explanations, the truth was surprisingly simple. Remember Vincenzo Peruggia, the former Louvre employee? He had worked inside the museum. He knew the building. He knew the routines. And on the morning of the theft, he allegedly hid inside the museum until it was quiet. Then, he removed the painting from the wall, took it out of its protective frame, and walked away with it. One of the most famous thefts in history wasn't carried out by a criminal mastermind. It was carried out by a man who largely blended into the background. But here's the truly unbelievable part. The Mona Lisa wasn't hidden in some distant country. It wasn't buried underground. It wasn't locked inside a secret vault. For more than 2 years, Perugia reportedly kept the painting remarkably close by, while newspapers around the world published endless stories, while police chased leads, while millions wondered where the painting had gone. The Mona Lisa sat quietly in hiding. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening. The painting was becoming a celebrity. Every article increased public fascination. Every rumor attracted more attention. People who had never heard of the Mona Lisa suddenly knew its name. People who had never cared about art became invested in the mystery. The theft transformed the painting into a global obsession. Then, in 1913, the story finally took another dramatic turn. Perugia attempted to sell the painting in Italy, believing, according to his own claims, that it should be returned to its homeland. The plan quickly unraveled. Art experts examined the painting. Authorities were notified, and the missing masterpiece was finally recovered. After more than 2 years, the Mona Lisa had been found. The news spread around the world. Again, crowds gathered, newspapers celebrated, and the painting began its journey back to the Louvre. When it finally returned to Paris, it wasn't merely a respected Renaissance portrait anymore. It was a legend. The theft had turned it into the most talked-about painting on Earth. Millions who had never seen it now wanted to. Millions who had never heard of Leonardo da Vinci now knew his masterpiece. The irony was impossible to ignore. The thief had tried to take the painting away from the world. Instead, he introduced it to the world. Today, millions of visitors travel to the Louvre every year, hoping to catch a glimpse of the Mona Lisa. Many spend hours navigating crowded galleries for just a few seconds in front of the painting. They photograph it, they study it, they marvel at it, and most never realize that its rise to global fame wasn't caused by the painting alone. It was also caused by a theft that transformed a Renaissance masterpiece into a worldwide icon. Leonardo da Vinci could never have imagined it. More than 400 years after he painted that mysterious smile, a crime would help make it immortal. And that's what makes the story so fascinating. Because sometimes history isn't shaped only by great artists. Sometimes it's shaped by unexpected events. And in the case of the Mona Lisa, one of the greatest acts of theft in history became the very thing that made Leonardo da Vinci's masterpiece unforgettable.